afternoon and welcome to Veracity's Quick Tips. My name is Jeff Smith and I'm the CTO of Veracity Industrial Networks. And today I want to talk about the topology page and some of the options we have for viewing the topology page and changing or adjusting it as needed. It's important to note that while I have this screen set to fit to window, it may also be that you have multiple networks. So I may have a network here, down in the right corner, what have you, or wherever I want them. Some of the options for adjusting or moving things around is if I grab the control key first and I move an object, I get the entire object and its associated devices. In this case, that was a switch. I can also move around the entire thing by grabbing and dragging it with a mouse. So for purposes of example, I'm going to go back to fit to window. And as we look at the icons on the page, we have options with regard to the data or information that we show. All of that is done by manage views. If I were to go to manage views, you'll note that switch display options are named. Maybe I want the IP address, in which case the IP address assigned to the switch from a management perspective is shown. You can see that it's actually different than all of the devices. If I come back to manage views, I may do the same thing with device display. So today I have, or at this point, I have name and IP on. I may also want to turn on MAC address. So I can see the MAC address for those devices. And this allows me to pick and choose what information is useful to me. If I'm doing troubleshooting of network traffic, it may be important that I see very quickly what the MAC address is. And instead of looking through the device asset list, I can turn them on here and take a quick look. From a day-to-day perspective, I tend to not leave MAC address turned on, and I save it. Another option we have under Manage Views is the ability to come in and create a new view. So I may create a view and call it My View. And when I create and save this view, I now have a list of views up here in the top. So if I can click between the views. So if I were to move something around like so, and then click back to default, you'll see that it remembers. Often I use this to focus on different parts of larger networks so that it's very easy for me to jump around without having to zoom back out, go over here, back over here. I can do it all with the My View functionality or the view adjustments. That pretty much sums up everything that's in here. You can have multiple views. I could create 2, 3, or 4 more if I wanted to. Zoom is kind of self-explanatory. It gives you the option to change the view. You can also do it with a mouse wheel. Fit to window, you saw earlier. Let's go back to default view. Regenerate. So if there are a lot of devices on the network and there's lots of changes going on the network, or you get this thing organized in such a way that you don't like how it looks, you can click regenerate and it's going to rebuild this picture from scratch the way the controller sees it. So I could have this like this like this. And if it's a larger network, it might become unwieldy if I've set it up to the way and it just doesn't work the way I have it set up. So I can hit regenerate. And again, the controller will redraw the network as it sees the network. Oftentimes that's great to just restore a particular view. Only devices. This allows me to look at devices that have been seen in the previous X number of minutes, hours, days, weeks, months, and years. I can look for devices that have not been seen in the previous. Maybe I want to see something that hasn't been seen in the last 1 hour. That would show me anything that fell off the network. So you get a lot of flexibility in terms of showing what's there, what's not there, when it wasn't there, or when it showed up. Rule level violations allow you to see violations in rules. There's a level model in NetOptics, which allows you to build something very similar to a Purdue model. And when you do that, it constrains rules that are created to those levels. As an administrator, I have the ability to override those rule constraints. Perhaps I want something up in the DMZ to talk to something on the controls level, or maybe the remote IO or the IO level. I have that capability, and by turning on rule level violations, I can see anything that is. In this instance, there aren't any. Search and filter, pretty self-explanatory. I can say, show me everything that's in the control level or the industrial level. I want to see only laptops and PLCs. The filter window or the search filter window is contextually sensitive to what's on the page. So the only thing I have to pick from are those devices that are actually found on the page. So I don't have to read through 27 of these trying to find where laptops are. So that gives you a lot of flexibility. There's a lot of control capability from this page. Um, and it's an easy way to get a quick view into your network connectivity and your network, what's plugged into what's plugged into where. You can also click on things, get a little detail of them. I can see who the peers are for this particular device. If I select a switch, I can see what device types are attached to this switch. The 2 indicates that it's connected to port 2, laptop is on port 1. I have a switch peer, which is op20 switch. I can see that that is plugged into port 1 on op10, and it's currently connected at 1 gigabit per second. I have physical devices plugged into my network. So L43 is on port 3, engineering laptop port 2, and L85 on port 5. This functionality is fantastic. When you're assisting somebody in remotely troubleshooting a network, oftentimes you're asking, what does the network look like? What's plugged into what's cabled to where? And you may or may not get an accurate representation. And if you don't actually understand what's physically plugged into what, it leads to a tremendous amount of confusion and it makes it extremely difficult to troubleshoot it. With NetOptics and the topology page and the details provided, it makes it much, much easier to understand what your network actually looks like in real time without having to go through the fuss of figuring that out over long distances. That's all we have for today. Thanks for your time, and we'll see you for our next Net Quick Tips.